That's awesome. So we'll call to order and do a roll call. I'll start. Dee Forte, co-chair.
Steve Buzzle.
Sue Polyjura.
Stephanie Secord, your new recording secretary and public information officer.
Suzanne Woodland, Regulatory Council.
Celeste Brooks.
Cord Hallowell, Parks and Greenery Foreman.
Judas Bland.
All right, awesome. All right, our first order is to approve the minutes from June 5th, which was our last meeting. I hope you guys all had a great summer.
Do you have agendas you could pass out?
Oh, I don't know if we have any more.
I'm going on to the stack, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Here too.
Yep.
You won't want to say draft.
And did you get a chance to read the June 5th minutes?
I wasn't given the minutes. All I got was the agenda.
Sorry about that. I think we got your email.
To ask your preference, I post both the agenda and the minutes to the calendar item on the city website. I am happy to share them individually as PDFs with the committee, if that makes it easier so you don't have to download.
I mean, we should get them emailed to us, I
I
think.
think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
We can do that.
yeah, so we get a chance to read them ahead of time. So I'll give you a minute to read through. Anybody have any updates to that?
Motion to accept the minutes.
Number 5. I haven't completed all the straightening. I've completed a lot of straightening, but it's an ongoing thing. Number 5.
Okay,
See if it's completed straightening and all. That's not quite accurate.
yeah, and you did a great job on the Whipple stones.
That's a lot of work still needed to be done over there.
Hey, how are you?
Fine, fine. It's come to deserve.
Celeste, is that a motion to approve as amended?
Yes, a motion to update to most of the headstones in the hall have been straightened and then to accept.
Yeah, continued straightening or something like that.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay, one of the things we wanted to update everybody on is the Point of Grace wall. I don't know if you know if it was a snowplow or but
We're not sure what, but
what happened.
no, you can see we put the temporary concrete
Yes.
barriers there.
So there's a temporary concrete barrier on there. It's one of our most visited cemeteries, and so we just wanted to get an update on, you know,
Well, that's gonna tie into number 5.
number 5 too.
Yeah. So I'll kind of let Suzanne explain that,
Sure,
if you don't mind.
sure. And then I'll let you, any of the technical, I'm gonna pass back over to you, Corin.
Okay.
So here's what we anticipate happening. So number 5 on your agenda is the capital improvement plan. So just for anyone who's not familiar, I'm gonna circulate those, just take one, just for reference. Every year, as part of our budget process, the city works to identify items that should go into our capital improvement plan. So that might include an upgrade to a wastewater treatment facility, it might include roadway improvements. It certainly includes things like parks, like an upgrade to a park or a playground. And it also includes improvements to historic cemeteries. And so this is a way for the city to identify kind of project capital costs, as opposed to operations. So Corin obviously has a crew which, helps maintain, does the mowing and other kind of physical labor parts of our cemetery, and that's handled in a different portion of the budget. This portion of the budget in the CIP is meant to help us accrue money for project work, for the bigger project work. So Corin and I had a conversation with the Public Works Director, and he anticipates updating this element sheet later, so it'd probably be, I think, end of September, or beginning of October, when staff has to do all their work as part of this process, because there's a process. And it is likely to show some revised numbers here. What may happen is, because we anticipate that the repairs for Point of Graves Wall is likely to be higher than, say, if you look at each fiscal year, higher than the 40,000. He might suggest that we kind of group some of that money together. So we're gonna spend a chunk of money this year doing design. And so then you might see a higher number in an out year. So whether it'll be 27, because we're now planning for FY 26. So it might be 27, 28. We're just gonna have to see what we get, how long it takes us to do a design, what we might need for archaeological or historical approvals. But that's what sort of Corin and the team at Public Works will be looking at in the next couple weeks to figure out, how do we adjust this element sheet in our capital improvement plan, which will then go before the planning board and city council for approval and ultimately built into the next year's budget, so that we can adequately, or at least begin to set aside enough monies to actually repair that wall, because it's gonna be a bigger repair. So it's not less money. In fact, it might be more money in a particular year, but we're still trying to parse out where we think that is and how much it might be reasonable to kind of allocate for a particular year. So
We have the funds for a design.
exactly,
Or
we have,
cemetery
exactly,
fund, so we'll start with a design, because that's where it all
Exactly.
starts anyway.
exactly. So the design will start,
Yeah,
because we do have that already accumulated.
right, exactly. Thank you for that
So
explanation, and Corin also
Yeah.
for that clarification.
So what-
This started before 25.
Yes.
So we might have like 100,000
So that's why there's money for design.
Right.
that we can put for the design of the Point of Graves wall in 2026. Unfortunately, it's probably gonna cost that much for a design.
Cost a lot.
Yeah.
Cost,
Yeah.
$100,000 design, you thinking?
I mean, 50 to 70 maybe, I mean.
And then you've
the
got
director.
permitting
We have a
potential.
lot of archaeological stuff going on, there's
Yeah.
all the surveying, there's all the issues with water drainage.
Yeah, I was gonna
also,
ask about
like
that.
the,
Yeah.
The Prescott
sea level
Park,
rise,
kinda,
and, that, all that ties in, so it's quite a bit of work that has
so
to go
that's
on.
taken into consideration, which is
Yeah,
awesome.
all that stuff will be considered in a design,
And the
Okay.
pumping station
in the
too,
pumping station.
which is across the street, that's gonna be replaced.
That'll be
I
the
think.
tool we can use to then go get some idea of cost.
Yeah.
It's going to be a really big number. Because it's not just the section that fell down. Likely it's gonna be the whole wall. I mean, it's, you can't just fix that little part and then tie it into this other old part. There's gonna have to be some sort of plan to marry it all together.
Do you think you might have to create like a swimming pool all the way around it to keep the water out and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
raise it?
that's up to that's on the engineers.
Yeah, okay.
That's why we're gonna do a design, just to.
I
Thank you.
remember that Sue was exploring getting some of the people at UNH to try to find out why that fence in that area is much lower.
Yeah.
What's happening on the ground.
That'll be part of the design, I would imagine, would be some sort of exploratory survey.
So there is some groundwater monitoring going on now with UNH in not in that precise location, but part of the challenge is because of the cemetery's location, there may not be many options in terms of kind of protection because of the other short of a seawall, because that's kind of what we're challenged with even in Prescott Park, and that's why we're looking at raising, for example, some of the buildings, moving and raising some of the buildings, is because there are so many entry points for the water. But again, as Corin said, part of that is the design to see what can reasonably be done. But I don't want to overpromise, but it's certainly an element in consideration. But I know it's one of the challenges that we have throughout that whole area, which is you can put a high wall or additional drainage structures, but depending on where the other low points are, your water will just come in another direction. So it will be looked at, but I don't want to overpromise. But we know we've got some years and we need a wall in the meantime. And what we can do is once we have the updated element sheet for this fiscal year, that's going to go to the planning board. Between Stephanie, Corin, and I, we'll make sure that when that is actually released to the public, we circulate a copy to you. So, and hopefully you all are satisfied with kind of how we're looking at, addressing this and, getting the money together that we need to do the work that we need to do. The public hearing is Monday, November 17th for the CIP.
And will this be discussed in detail?
Every project, every CIP project is part of a package that gets presented.
November 17th?
Yep. But it's distributed in advance beforehand. So if you happen to have a cemetery committee meeting at the beginning of November or any time after, this comes out, you could decide if you feel you need to weigh in publicly just to say, yes, we support it. But know that staff is going to be working on this.
Question. Now, this money that is outlined on the sheet, there are quite a few other projects that need to be done on other cemeteries. Does that mean that repairing this wall is gonna take most of the money that is on the budget?
Well, we can talk about that. So we want to talk about what we have kind of planned for 2026 and open it up to other things that people might have planned. We'll talk about that. But, it's important, I think, just for us to have transparency on how much money we have, and so that we can talk about projects and.
I mean, the CIP money, if I'm not incorrect, would be identified specifically for the wall repair, because that's a project. But the operating budget that we have, portion of that money is going to go towards the design for this.
Oh,
But we
I didn't
still-
realize that. Okay.
I think I have that correct, don't I?
It's
The CIP money would be
I don't know.
mixed up.
Yeah, I think there's money from the prior years still.
Okay.
And I think that's part of it along with what's in for this year.
Okay.
Already.
But that's
So
kind
in
of
the
a
CIP.
bucket. It's not just for Point of Graves.
Correct, it's the
Okay.
bucket.
Yep.
Yes. Yep, and then, so there's like the doing the stuff, building things bucket, CIP, and then there's the operational stuff. Plus, there's money that we've been using that's been donated, right? So like some of the costs for the Whipple, headstone, we use those donations, so they didn't, impact your funds. So some of the
Absolutely,
donation money, and I forgot to ask for an updated list of what's left in the donations, because, they've been a little bit here and there, and I know we're looking at possibly doing some plantings with the larger donation that came in for the North Cemetery area, so, yeah. So there's pieces. I think if you, as a committee, kind of think about, are there any other projects or needs that you might have? Now's a good time to start talking about them, And then at the next meeting, maybe we can come back with, okay, here's what we know we have, because we might have a better idea
Okay.
of what's left for donations and where some of these stand. Does that sound right, Corin?
Yeah.
That sounds good.
I just wanted to add too, like, one thing the committee could be doing between now and when the design plan is put together is putting any input as to what that wall may look like when it's rebuilt. You know, if you have any historic references you want to add in there, that would all be put in as part of that plan. So that's something that the committee could input.
Yeah, and I
Because I
think
know there's been, nobody really knows, but there might be,
I did look. We're going to the Athenaeum.
Yeah.
I went to the Portsmouth room at the library. They don't have anything there.
pictures like that.
And I think
Pictures of
Sue
art.
might have given you some information on that, and so,
It also might just be like, what does the committee want it to look like? You know, if we don't know historically what it looked like, it would be nice to have input from the committee as to, okay, well, if we're going to make a new wall or repair a wall, what do we want it to look like? So that would be important to have input from this group as to, that can be included in the
Right.
design idea plan. There might be 3 design ideas or 3 options or based on cost.
right.
Yeah.
And to get
That's
the ball
great.
rolling, we'll need to get, you know, the pump station looked at, and
Will all be part of the
it's gonna be, all be
design
part of
plan,
the
but having input from the
design.
committee would be
Yeah.
really important. Like, hey, if we had our dream wall, this is what it would
Yeah.
look like.
So, I mean, what it looks like, and I'm a total amateur, so I'm not a mason. So, but what it looks like is an original brick wall and then cemented over to look like a seawall, kind of.
It's interesting when we took out the part that was broken, there were about 5 different layers.
Right.
They've just been added on and added on and added. So there were
Yeah.
like, you know, there's brick, different types of concrete. There was some granite.
It would be
some
great
block in there.
to get, and I think you mentioned you have somebody within the city that could just kind of identify those layers.
Yeah.
Would just be helpful, I think, for,
But you just replacing that segment of the
I
wall.
think the idea would be that
Or replacing the whole
look at the
wall.
whole thing. Is, you know, just to replace a portion of an old wall. You know, you start with, hey, what's it gonna cost to do this whole thing, and then we go from there. But that's part of a design process, is to like look at all of our options. So if we could have our dream world, we'd get a brand new wall. What do we want it to look like? What would it look like historically, potentially? Maybe we have some references for that.
and what would work for,
What would work for based on what
For our
gets
climate
discovered
change.
during the design process. So, you know, and then I think it gets scaled back accordingly. But I think certainly looking at the whole wall is where you start.
Yeah, I agree with Corin. Look at the whole wall as a start.
I totally agree. It's tempting to just want to put a Band-Aid on it because it doesn't look great now. I mean, honestly,
I think the idea
it's
is-
safe.
The ideal is to restore this entire wall back to something historically as close to what we can imagine as being accurate as possible, to then have a wall that would last a really, really long time.
So it's kind of like a balance because we want to replace the whole wall,
Cost effectively.
but we know climate change is coming, so it's got to be something that's sustainable.
Well, again, that in my mind is left up to engineers and people like that. We
Yep.
just say,
No.
we want a brick with a granite cap, because we think that that's what it might look like back and would be appropriate to have around the cemetery. And then let the designers
Yeah,
figure
the
out if
engineers
that's gonna
can-
work and how that's gonna work, and maybe how that, or you say, we think it was probably a granite block wall, or we'd love to see a granite block wall, based on this information that we have. And then that information can be an input into one design, or maybe we get a couple of options as to,
Yeah.
again, let's go from scale, right? So,
Historically, most of those cemeteries, they had a stone wall. Because in those days, granite was kind of a higher end kind of element. So any other, cemeteries around, like a church or something like that, will either have a metal fence, an iron fence, or a stone wall.
I mean, I think we could probably dedicate a couple of meetings to discussing or portions of it. I mean, it's gonna be a process, and that's, maybe that's where we end up.
Yeah, from what I read in the beginning, that it was exactly that. It was a stone wall for a cow pasture that then became a burying ground. So I mean, it's and cows were still allowed in it, even when they had buried people there. But I don't know.
So
So
they didn't have to cut the grass.
yeah,
the
true,
cows.
I guess.
It'd be nice to standardize all the cemeteries at a common thing, but, so we can look at the other
Yeah,
fences like and look at those.
yeah. Okay, so any other questions on Point of Graves? I guess no. It's as long as the wheels are in motion, I think we're,
I think it's a big step.
yeah.
I think getting a design is a pretty solid,
Yeah.
move in the right direction.
Okay.
You know what, it would be interesting, that wall that they took down on the Treadwell Mansion? They took that whole wall that was around the Treadwell Mansion on Pleasant Street. And I've driven by it, and, I mean, the wall is back, but it's not the size it used to be.
No,
So it's like, there's probably a lot of pieces that they took down from there, somewhere, that they just did not include back when they rebuilt it.
yeah.
Too bad we can't claim it instead of we'll use it for this other project.
They need a lot of stones to.
Because they took it all, put it in pallets, and they took it away when they took it down.
They numbered the pallets.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause I live nearby, so I watched the whole thing. They numbered the pallets and then they brought them back and tried to put them back in the same thing.
Yep.
But there's definitely some new stones in there.
Yeah, and there's
So-
definitely not as many as they were.
Yeah. Yeah. It looks great though. So we're gonna talk about that too. So, the next thing with the potential 2026 projects is Union Cemetery. We have a lot of the wrought iron that needs to be repaired or replaced. So I was in contact, Suzanne and Corin for the name, with a Peter Hapney, who lives nearby. He lives on Rock Street, or his studio is on Rock Street, and he does this kind of work. And so I wanted him to come down and take a look at it, but what he would like is to get kind of a map of what needs to be done and like a count exactly of what needs to be done. So I need to do that, to go down there and just kind of map it out and say, this needs to be straightened. And I don't know, Sue, I know you know Union Cemetery well, if you want to meet me down there sometime, to just look at it and just point and
Yeah.
say, this needs to be fixed.
Not as well as I know the other side of the cemetery,
Yeah.
but I can definitely.
But
help with
anyway,
that.
we can talk if you want to join me on that. And
So
get-
I just want to be clear, like, we got a donation for $10,000.
yes, I should have mentioned that.
So the idea was to take that, we've talked about this in the past, what do we want to do with that money?
Yep.
It needs to be used at North and Union.
Yep.
So the idea was to put that money towards fixing wrought iron. And so that's kind of where this came out of, I think, because that's a pretty decent amount of money. We might be able to get quite a bit of that, if not all of it, repaired potentially.
Yes, and that was my conversation with Peter. Which you had suggested. I said, we have this $10,000 donation. We want to know, what can you do there? And he's like, and he was back to me, what needs to be done. So it was kind of like that back and forth. And so I'm going to provide him a map and
Some pictures or something. Yeah.
kind of needs to be done. So I'll do that within the next week or so. And the next one, so we're back to the Treadwell Mall wall kind of. Wendell Tomb in Pleasant is kind of falling apart, and Michael Griffin, who couldn't make it tonight, but he had mentioned a mason that he thought would be really good, and it happens to be the same mason that did, or the company that did the Treadwell Mall. So he's gonna get me that contact information, and I'll contact him and go from there. If not, I'll contact Stepping Stones and different other local masonry places to just see. So for Point of Graves, we kind of have the CIP to go forward on. For Union, we have that $10,000 donation. For Wendell, we don't necessarily have any money, unless there's something left over in the CIP, but it's just something that we want to kind of move forward in 2026, if everybody agrees. So, all right. So we talked about number 5 CIP. Any other questions on that?
What time is it on the 17th?
It'll be in the evening. Usually the city council meetings start at 7, so unless they adjust when they do that.
Excellent. All right. So the next item, we have headstone straightening, if any. So there's no,
Putzing away at it, and I've been fixing more epoxying headstones more this summer because it was just too hot, the
yeah.
physical labor, but I've straightened a
It's been
few,
a hot
and
summer.
that epoxy is great.
Awesome time.
It does.
How's your supply doing?
Awesome.
A little goes a long way.
It does.
This is the stuff you
Yeah,
recommend.
that's great. I'm glad that worked.
That worked
Really,
great.
it's something. 'Cause
And
that's-
Steve fixed a granite post for us down at Plains Ball Field that was
Plains Ball
backed
Field?
into over by the
Is that held up?
for the memorial.
Oh,
And I was like, hey, you want another side project? And it's holding up great. And he
Okay.
came right over and fixed it for us, so that was very appreciated.
Pleasure. So I'm gonna start getting going, so if anyone else is doing Celeste, you still would like to help the straightening and
yeah, I might have more time this fall. This was oppressively hot this year.
so we'll get going again on that.
And that brings us to the next item for headstone cleaning. I don't know if we want to get a fall schedule
Yeah.
together.
I would love to do a full one.
Okay. And what works best, like, Saturday mornings?
Probably.
No?
Busy on the weekends, you know, like doing things with friends or family out of town most of the time. I mean, I said it before and I'll say it again, like afternoons in the week and you're bound to get a lot more people who wanna come, not spend their precious Saturdays that they spend with their family, you know.
I do either or.
So-
I'm retired, so.
Yeah. But it is great for people who have the entire week free, but
Mhm.
if you have a 9 to 5 job, then
Yeah.
Then your weekends become important.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anybody wants to throw out a date or a location that you wanna.
You're the head of that committee. When it comes to
Cleaning,
repairs,
repairs or cleaning, if we do some, any of the cemeteries that are in urgent need for cleaning, probably Union Cemetery over there. We did a bunch of that before,
Yeah.
but it's,
a lot of it has been clean. We should just kind of look at it and see if we can just spray and just kind of let nature do it. But we have to start thinking in the context of 2026, because, you know, being that is the anniversary, it's the 250th. So maybe some graves that are highlighted because of their contribution for another country contribution. It can be highlighted for the 250.
Yeah, I like that idea.
So any that needs repair, there is, the Sons of the American Revolution put markers on the graves of the men that participated in the raid on Fort William and Mary, Fort Constitution. And there is one that it is so bad. It's only like little pieces. And I'm like, yeah, the new marker looks great, but the headstone itself is like sad.
Hall needs quite a bit of work, we've never really gone in there, we cleared it out, but we still have quite a bit of, you guys could do a day in there, straightening and
Hall,
Fixing.
I've been meaning
Fixing.
to get up there and look at it.
Yeah. Okay.
I could use some attention
So
for
we-
sure.
Probably couldn't get a water truck up there, right? I don't know.
I know, I don't think the neighbors might like that idea.
I could get some water there. I have a small one. How about
Like a gator or something?
50-gallon, it's 100 on a little skid that I could put on the forks of the tractor. It's got a 12-volt pump. So you could we could get you some water up there. It's a pretty small area, and if you're just using the D4, D2, I know
D2.
D2, and you're just filling bottles and some buckets, yeah,
Those get long ways.
so it's a little, yeah, we could definitely work something up. There's some water up there. But I know, the intention was, we cleaned it out, we're sort of getting up there, try to get up there every month and keep it back, but the intention was to get in there and do straightening and repair work, and that hasn't happened quite yet. So that would, I think, be a good move, good place to go do a bunch of work.
I
I think
think,
you've done so much cleaning that any cleaning would be, you get a lot done quickly, like Sue said, you go through and just spray the D2 and walk away. Especially if you timed it with some rain. A couple of days later it might rain.
During this
I
weekend?
think that's a good idea for the fall, for us to just conquer Hall. And then in the spring, just make sure that, for the 250th anniversary, that North looks good and Union looks good.
Can you shoot for Saturday? Like maybe need a hall in there,
Potentially. But
weather permitting, because it's like,
this
30.
Saturday,
45% chance of rain on Saturday is what they're saying now.
did you see the air show from there?
What time is the air show? Noon, right?
You can see the air show
Yeah.
from anywhere.
8 o'clock, we'll be done by then.
Right. How many, that place isn't very big.
There is a
But
boatload of things
just about every other headstone's broken or not.
broken or laying down.
Yeah, that's gonna take some time.
Yeah.
Anytime you guys can put it in there would be great.
Yeah, we're gonna be there Saturday at 8 o'clock. I'll show up, right? Anyone else wants to do it?
So do you want water
No.
up there?
You're gonna start with the straightening and gluing.
Just
and
clear
epoxy.
that straight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good.
Repairs and straightening is what I'm gonna focus on.
Okay, so then maybe we can schedule the cleaning for October.
Just, weather, see how cold it's gonna get, but yeah, we can
Okay,
use some
well-
water in October.
We'll table the headstone cleaning at Hall until our October meeting. If that
Yeah.
sounds okay.
Seems
Does
like
that sound-
repair work first in there,
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of little ones.
but maybe you all wanna do a morning at, just go to Union and start spraying,
Yeah.
cleaning, anyway this time. Union North, I think you're gonna get a lot done quickly, don't you think, Sue, with all the cleaning that's already been done? Cause it's not as much scraping and rinsing, it's really just,
Because it's been done before, it's all
Yeah,
been done.
the only graves that seem to be needing, the headstones that seem to be needing re-cleaning are the ones that are under the tree.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly,
and both by where the fence used to be and that other tree, by Maplewood.
I think you and Sue Sterry both found that once they've been cleaned, just applying a little bit of more of the cleaning stuff and just walking away really works well.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, maybe do it in the spring so that, you know, it's gonna get a winter worth of damage or birds or, so maybe just wait till the spring for that?
I would. I'd clean in the spring and do repairs if anybody has time this fall, and I'd really focus on fall.
All right.
I will just suggest, because I know it can be, you know, I'm hearing from Celeste that, you know, some afternoon, if I heard you right, during the weekday might be useful, and you seem to have some time then, being retired, but working very hard. If it becomes useful at any point to work on just trying to schedule some dates for you guys to get together or to identify a date, I could work with Stephanie, or Corin could work with Stephanie, and we could push out, you know, Dee, if you initiated, just say, hey, looked at the weather, or, you know, however you want to do that. We've looked at the weather the next 2 weeks. How does Thursday afternoon 3 to 5 work? And if you sent that to Stephanie, she could push a note out to all of the committee members, blind copies, so that you guys don't accidentally reply all and create a meeting, and just say, could you respond back and let me know, you know, would you be interested in this date? Because you can have that kind of contact for scheduling purposes, and then if it turns out you were going to be more than just 2 of you committee members at the time, because keep in mind, if there's more of you, you know, we might want to just notice of quorum, like, hey, you're not doing business, but you might all be together because you're cleaning. You know, we can help with that logistics. So just know, I know sometimes it's hard. I'm always saying, hey, let's all just pull out our phones now and figure out what day might work. But because you've got this weather piece, just know if there's something we can do to help coordinate with just pushing out an email, we could do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah, I'm thinking for Hall, I can summarize. You guys seem to go like wink, wink. Gonna do some straightening in September, and then October, at our October meeting, we pick a date. We look 2 weeks out and pick like a week night or something like that. The weather's still really good in October, so I think we could do some cleaning after the straightening in Hall. And then in September, or in the spring, we focus on North and Union. So, does that sound
Sounds good.
good?
Yeah.
All right. And I am totally open, you guys, so tell me if I'm off base or anything. All right, and then number 8, we just wanted to talk about just our committee in general, a couple items. Our mission, so lately, and I was telling Peter too that, and other people probably have been approached by somebody that was wanting to establish green cemeteries in Portsmouth, and it kept reminding me, I guess, of our mission is for historic cemeteries, and so we're not involved in like looking at property within the Portsmouth area to establish new cemeteries. You know, our focus really is on the 6 or 7 historic cemeteries that we have. And so I just wanted to say that and say, you know, do you think there should be a change to our mission? And it's not like even with our mission just being on historic cemeteries that in the future we might be asked, you know, to give input on like a newer cemetery that's part of the city of Portsmouth. But I just putting that out there. Does anybody have any questions on our mission and if you think it should be different or?
And if you don't mind, I'll just add that from a city management side, there are conversations and efforts being looked at and responding to inquiries related to some of the other current issues not associated with the historic cemeteries. So it's not going unaddressed. It's just being addressed through the city manager's office, Public Works, as we kind of look at what some options are going forward in the future, just for clarification, if that helps.
I think if you wanted to look at stuff that would deal with green burials, there's a lot of, legal issues, especially when it comes to New Hampshire. Those laws are, are kind of always in flux. I don't know if you know the current state of green burials in New Hampshire, but laws are always kind of changing there. Last time I checked, New Hampshire kind of had something in motion, but a lot of them weren't legal necessarily. So, we would have to be consorting with lawyers and stuff, I think, a bit if we were looking towards going in that direction.
Yeah.
It's a green burial.
So, something like, say you wanted your body put into a pod that would become a tree, that would be like considered a green burial.
Somebody in Puerto Rico did something like that in his property, his private property. He had a lot of acres, and he decided that he was going to offer that, and a lot of people have taken advantage of it. So he had, even my own sister, that's what she wanted to go.
Yeah.
And they can plant a tree, or they can just put a little, marker in there for her, but it would be in like a tree grove that he has, and that's all that he wants to do with that area. And I'm like,
Right, so it basically involves
it was a private thing.
no embalming and no
Ashes.
cremation. You know what I mean?
This is
Cremation takes fuel, energy. Embalming
Yeah,
involves,
but that's more like the chemical.
yes,
the
exactly.
chemical there.
So green means none of that.
Yeah.
And
So
anyway,
this particular one is only for ashes.
right,
not green.
but I guess, yeah, I just wanted to get it out there, and it's not our concern. I guess you
We're
don't,
more
we
of a
don't,
preservation.
right, we're preservation, thank you.
I think it's a cool aspect, but I agree, I don't think it's quite our area.
Yeah.
I think
Totally agree.
preservation is enough.
All
The
right,
city take care of that inquiry.
Yeah. Oh my God.
all right. So vacancies. I'm not sure if Duncan has officially,
Yeah, I meant to ask him how he was doing, and I haven't. I will put that on my list, just to check in with him.
but we do have room for, one or two more committee members. We had a couple people reach out to us. One was a recent graduate and wanted kind of like a one-year term, which would be great. The other one, also had an interest in Portsmouth Cemetery. So we got back to him, Suzanne, thank you for making that initial contact back. And I haven't heard any further. I gave him my phone number to call. I haven't heard any further, but if you guys have any people that are interested, good.
Putting out publicly that we're looking for someone, or is it just through the grapevine at this moment?
I think so.
It's posted on the city clerk's website.
It is
probably.
posted, yeah.
So it's not, we haven't put it in a newspaper or on Facebook or any announcements, really. It's just, if
No.
someone was went and looking for it, they could probably
Yeah.
see it. but-
Yeah,
At least a couple people saw it on the city.
right, because we've had
website, so,
2 recent inquiries, so.
Yeah. Okay, so,
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it, and I was just curious if there was any appetite for other people, other cemetery representatives to be a part of your group.
I would definitely say so, yeah.
Because I'm not a resident, but I'm a trustee of the proprietor cemetery.
Right, John. Do we have?
Do they have to be a resident to be part of this?
They do under the current ordinance, because we didn't set it up to have a non-resident, but someone who has a connection to cemeteries as a voting member. I mean, obviously, John could come anytime, and at the discretion of the chair, you could have them sit at the table and ask opinions. It's just a question of voting. but we'd probably have to change the ordinance in order to, have a representative, if you will, from another cemetery.
Is there a category that can be added to, like, friends of the committee, or someone that is not necessarily part of it, but wants to join
We,
in an informal kind of way?
It's a public meeting, so John, thank you for joining tonight, and you
Yeah.
are totally welcome. You
Yeah.
know, any meeting. So to your point, like you're totally welcome. You might not be able to vote if you're not a committee member, but we also have the avenue of changing so that we could allow non-residents to have a connection.
and a lot of this is really up to in terms of how much input and the structure of input in your committee. There's no reason why you can't, without an ordinance change, as I said, invite members to other people to the committee who have an expertise or a particular interest that aligns with the work of the committee, and just, I know for other committees, they're invited, like they get the regular invitations to the meetings, the agendas and the packets as a courtesy because they're regular attendees, and we know that the committee wants their regular attendance for input and perspective. So that could certainly be done. It's easy enough to invite and allow. Again, it's at the discretion of the chair and the committee, like, yes, we would like to have your input and, make a space for that. Or I would say you could look at changing the ordinance to allow a specific slot for that. We just have to talk about what's the most logical way to do that. But some committees are set up to have representatives of particular institutions, if you will.
I like that idea.
Consultants.
And John, if you want to be our person
Yeah.
that you're,
Tap into your expertise.
yeah. So we'll just include John on.
Yeah, we're happy to, John. If you just let me know which email address you want me to use, we can just put you on the list for distribution of the agenda and any materials, if that helps.
Yeah, that would be great. And I don't think voting member is what I'm after just in the instant here. I really appreciate the spirit of what you're doing with volunteer maintenance of the stones and all that. And we have a similar situation where Proprietor Cemetery is very old and lots of old stones, and I'm trying to get a handle on how I can muster people like you have to start that process of trying to maintain some of those fallen over stones. So I'm very excited about what you're doing and hope to join you and get some expertise.
Excellent, thank you. I like
Vice
it.
versa too.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I like it.
All right, thank you.
And I'll still have some tomatoes the next time.
All right, so the next item, as far as, committee logistics, we were talking about meeting schedule, and Suzanne had mentioned this, and I just want to make sure that meeting monthly works. Well, I would think maybe, you might skip a couple meetings around the holidays, and the summer, but is monthly working for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So first Thursday at 4:00 will be our set time. And we'll see about December, if December works or January works, but we'll do that. All right, does anybody have any other business?
Yes. Suzanne, I don't know if you caught that email late this afternoon or early this
I skimmed it quickly,
Okay.
so go ahead.
The Portsmouth Historical Society reached out to the city manager, and I'm just going to read the email and get your input. They said that they will again be offering guided cemetery tours this October in both North and Point of Graves. Tours will take place Thursdays and Saturdays at 4 p.m. with locations alternating each week. After selling out last year, we're expanding our offerings this season, and all registration will be handled online in advance. As we plan, a couple of questions have come up. 1, may we place small temporary markers such as flags or lanterns to help guides locate specific graves? Number 2, are refreshments permissible? We are considering offering cider and donuts at the conclusion of each tour and would carry out all trash. There's no urgency. Our first tours begin in early October, but we wanted to check in early to ensure our plans are respectful of the cemeteries and any policies you may have. And they're just, so we wanted to put that in front of the committee to see if you had any thoughts or feelings or you're okay with it. That brings anything up.
Are they suggesting they're gonna put out like a table with refreshments, or they have like someone parked nearby with stuff and then they're gonna bring it out when the tour?
I'm not sure how it doesn't specify, it just says our refreshments. I'm assuming they'll serve them somehow in the cemetery that they're at.
As long as they're not like setting up a table, like and it's an event, you
Yeah.
know, then
Okay.
I have zero problem with that, as long as obviously they're picking up episodes, because
And it-
that's a big part of what cemeteries were for a long time, was a place to picnic and spend time with graves, so, or their loved ones.
I agree. And is it just October?
Let's see. It says, yes, it sounds like, yep, this October.
And Saturday?
Thursdays and Saturdays at 4 p.m. Also says anybody's welcome to come. Delighted to have anybody join them.
I think as far as the markers, I'd like to see what they look like before saying, yeah, you can permanently place them.
It's not permanent. I
It
think
just says little
they're
flags or
temporary.
lanterns. I think the idea is to put them there for the tour, take them away.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
that's,
And use them for the time of the tour
Yeah.
to help
So you can
identify
find the graves.
specific graves for the guides. It is,
Okay.
so whatever the highlights are, you know?
I
I
think
need to
if,
find out the dates, cause I'm gonna be giving some tours too.
Okay.
I
so-
think if we knew their time frame for putting in the flags or lanterns, like how long before the tour and how long after is their time frame for cleanup and setting?
Okay.
Because if it's like, oh, we'll set it up that day and then we'll get it before the day's end, you know, it shouldn't be there all day. It should be there, you know.
It sounds to me like it's just for the tour at the time of the tour, but I can certainly
But
find that out.
clear.
I was gonna say, we can just, because you're probably, you know, even if you meet in October, we kind of need to get back to them
Yeah,
sooner rather than later, but we can just say it should be timely
Temporary,
in terms of
only
the,
for the
you know,
time of
short
the
term,
tour.
put them up, take them down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we can put some parameters on that,
Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
so, thank you.
I noticed that in the Historical Society's newsletter today,
Yeah.
and I was wondering who actually does the tours.
Well, the person who wrote this email is Emma Stratton.
She's
She's
the
the executive director.
executive,
It doesn't specify who's actually giving the tours. So I will communicate to them that they're welcome to do these things. We want to make sure that any markers or lanterns are only placed for the time of the tour removed. And that, you know, please obviously pick up and don't leave your food and trash everywhere, which I think their intention clearly states that they would certainly not do that.
No, I mean, I like the PR.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's
Really,
good.
you know, somebody,
Right.
Good point about in future publicity, they might say in partnership with the city's cemetery committee. I don't know, Suzanne, how do you?
a link to our donations.
Or maybe on one of them, you know, we could all try and go and be like, oh, we have the cemetery committee, the
I'm
historic
definitely
cemetery committee with you.
Field trip?
Field trip.
Good idea.
I think
That's what I'm planning to do with my tours. I give people the link, said, I don't charge, but you're welcome to leave a donation.
Do you have a set schedule?
I don't.
Oh.
Because you're depending on the weather.
Okay.
So I like to do it maybe a week ahead, just put an announcement out,
And where do you announce it?
usually in the paper or put it on Facebook, some of the Portsmouth groups.
I'll look for
Well,
that.
they are doing tours Thursdays at 4, so you could say, instead of doing a meeting, we could always meet with them
Well,
for
it's
a
like-
tour.
you know, when you reply to them, would you ask if there was a date that they would like us to come as a group, maybe?
So
Okay.
Thursdays,
Thursdays and Saturdays at
Saturdays in
4,
October.
rotating.
If you want a tour of the North
Graves and
Cemetery,
North.
I'll give it to you anytime.
Yeah, but it would be, I'm saying for them
Anytime.
and for the people that are attending, how nice it is to have the cemetery committee
Just-
members.
just
I'm not
to
saying
meet
just
with
for us. I've lived in Portsmouth a whole lot. I appreciate it. It's great, but like,
I'm very
it's a,
flexible.
it's
to
a
that.
nice, it would be nice for those attending. How cool is that? It piques some more interest in the cemeteries, and then if
Yeah.
they have questions, that might also be like, oh, maybe someone there is super interested in cemeteries, and that's a new member that we just found.
exactly. I like the way you're thinking. That's good.
That's what we do, what I'd love to do.
Thank you.
Good. Any other business? All right, any public comment? I don't think we have.
Rich?
No,
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Sue. All in favor?
I